It doesn't take much digging before you find that the story of Joseph is one of the strangest narratives in the entire Hebrew Bible. And that bewilderment primarily stems from one question. What on earth is that ridiculous coat?
How I love my coat of many colors.
Sure, we know about the sibling rivalry and the crazy dreams, the boy who went from a slave and a prisoner to the most powerful man in Egypt. It's a nice character arc for an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. But the MacGuffin that sets it all into motion is a fashion item that seemingly has no business in a story about the Abrahamic family that began all of Western religion. There is so much ridiculousness, I don't even know where to begin. First, there's Joseph's father, Jacob. The Jacob, who spoke to God and wrestled with an angel, is apparently the world's most inept parent. Lesson 1, never ever show obvious favoritism to one child. But the second question really gets to the heart of it all. If you're going to show some love to your favorite son, a child who is wise beyond his years, as the text puts it, why give him a coat of all things? It's almost as if God made up this detail simply so that it could be turned into a Broadway play 4,000 years later. It turns out the colorful character with his colorful jacket is hiding some pretty dark secrets. But that's okay, because the most important book on earth is not just a series of fairy tales. They are dangerous inquiries into human nature. And Joseph's story might just be the most intriguing one of them all. Here's the Mensch Sense take. We'll need to start with a 30-second refresher on the story of Joseph. Ready? Joseph, one of the 12 brothers of Jacob, receives a fancy coat from his father. He has dreams about his brothers bowing to him, and the brothers openly hate him for it. The brothers conspire to kill him, but end up selling him as a slave to traders, who then sell him to an Egyptian magistrate. He becomes incredibly successful there, but the nobleman's beautiful wife makes advances towards him, a good-looking slave. Joseph resists. The wife is hurt, so she lies and says that he tried to force himself onto her. Then the nobleman has him put into prison. He then interprets the dreams of two of the Pharaoh's imprisoned servants. When one of them gets out, he tells Pharaoh about Joseph, where he is taken out of prison to meet Pharaoh, interprets his dream, and is promptly appointed as second in command over Egypt. Whew. There's more to the story, but that should be good enough for our purposes. Now, let's focus on this mysterious coat. What does it represent? Well, we can ask a broader question. What does clothing represent in general? Clothing serves many functions: for warmth and protection, for artistic self-expression, for signaling your allegiance to a particular group, or as a way to demonstrate your prestige or status. In the best sense, we use clothing as an external expression of ourselves that accurately reflects something internal about us. A Native American chief wears a headdress to show his wisdom and authority among the tribe. An army general wears the decorations that demonstrate his earned experience. But what happens when your clothing actually misrepresents you? We do not like when people pretend to be something they are not. If you wear skater clothing but you're not a skater, you are a poser. Someone who wears hip-hop style clothing but doesn't come from that background is sometimes called a suburban gangster or a culture vulture. It's pure inauthenticity, and it's offensive. Jacob sees something special in Joseph. He's called a ben zekunim, which some translate as a wise child, someone who has the qualities of an elder even when he's only 17. This is why he singles Joseph out for special clothing. In the same way that hundreds of years later, the high priest, the Kohen Gadol of the Jewish people, would wear ornate and beautiful clothing to signify his elevated position, this was the same intention that Jacob had for Joseph. Wasn't Jacob worried that it would cause resentment amongst the siblings? Of course not. If everybody recognized that Joseph was clearly more spiritually advanced than they were, the problem was not everyone saw Joseph that way, because Joseph himself was kind of a poser. When Joseph hangs out with his brothers, the text does not describe him as a wise or advanced young man. He's called a nar, which means an immature youth. So while Joseph seems like a natural-born leader to his father, he looks more like a self-involved teenager to his brothers. This is why they can't stand him. And when they plot to kill him, the very first thing they do is rip that ridiculous coat off of an undeserving Joseph. But here's where things get really interesting. Throughout Joseph's story, you can get a glimpse into his development as a character based on his relationship with clothing. Let me explain. After the whole being sold to your brothers to slavery incident, Joseph then finds himself as a uniquely blessed servant in his wealthy master's household. In fact, his success and his charm attract the unwanted attention of the master's wife. There's a moment where she corners him, alone in the house, and explicitly propositions him. It's the make or break moment for Joseph, whether to give in to temptation or to remain true to his godly values. But take a look at how the scenario is described. One day, he came into the house to do his work. As no members of the household were found inside, she caught hold of him by his garment and said, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and got away and fled outside. How strange that the garment, the clothing, returns to the story. This time, the garment literally represents his shallow exterior. Does he choose to identify as the immature teenager as his exterior good looks suggest? Or does he opt for something more internal? We can see the decision playing out in real time. He flees the seduction only by loosening himself from his clothing. It's as if he's saying, my externals don't represent who I really am. I need to shed that deceptive layer and find something deeper. And so he does go deeper, deep into the prison, which in Hebrew is simply called a pit, a sort of cavernous dungeon. Here he will spend several years learning to tap into his true self, one that is really mature and wise, as his father had once seen him to be. Well, guess what happens next? As soon as he's taken out of the prison to meet Pharaoh, the text adds one more detail. And Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was rushed from the dungeon. He had his hair cut and changed his clothes, and he appeared before Pharaoh. As Joseph comes into his own, ready for responsibility and greatness, he once more changes appearance, but this time he's ready for the clothing. His inner development matches his outer prestige. The character arc is complete. Clothing can mean many things to many people. Some don't take our appearance quite seriously enough, and they do a disservice by not reminding themselves of their inner greatness. Others seem to go the other extreme, spending more time on their wardrobe edits than on their inner character. We see from the story of Joseph, the clothes are not a trivial matter. The externals do count, just as long as they are the right fit. And that makes mensch sense.